Good morning. I want this to be a time when you learn something. When I was going to Sunday school as a child, I learned that Jesus' favorite food was Japanese because he loved me so. Okay, all right, so that joke of mine was printed in the paper today, and I just wanted to put it out there before I get attacked. So there's some people who evidently had really horrible childhoods because they don't like puns. I think there's therapy for that. So you just have to remember that a pun is a joke that is fully grown. Okay, remember this. No matter who you are, no matter where you are in your spiritual journey, you are welcome here. I want to begin today by making an announcement, and I hope it doesn't disturb you too much, but I'm going to announce that the world is coming to an end. And I will give you the date before we're done today. There are some really specific indicators that the world is coming to an end. And I'm going to share with you a few of the acorns that have fallen on my head. I'll explain that image again in a minute. These are in no particular order. A congressional candidate from Miami, Florida claims she was abducted by aliens when she was 7. Bettina Rodriguez-Agalier, who is now 59, said that the aliens abducted her when she was 7, took her off in their spaceship. They were tall, blonde, and the spaceship was powered by quartz rocks. Now, after I had written this class, the news magazine that I take the week picked up on this story. And if you're familiar with the week, they run a contest every week about some weird story in the news. And they mentioned the story and they said that if you were running this woman's congressional campaign, what campaign slogan would you come up with that would take advantage of her unique claim? And the winner was, "It takes a galaxy." The one I liked the most was, "My experience is out of this world." And even better, I thought, was, "I have friends in high places." All right, here's another acorn. A growing number of U.S. businesses are purchasing active shooter insurance. The policies compensate companies for the cost of lost business after a mass shooting and the lingering brand stigma and claims for damages by victims and their families. Here's another acorn. Police in Bothell, Washington have requested that residents please stop calling 911 to report that they can't log on to Facebook. By the way, I take a lot of journals, psychology, theological journals, journal for spiritual directors, and in almost every month, in one of those, there is an article reporting new research on how our so-called smartphones are wrecking our lives. Researchers at Baylor University did a survey of almost 200 people that shows that half of those people had been phubbed by their partners. Phubbing is a combination of snubbing and phone, and it's what you do when you turn away from your partner to give attention to your cell phone. Half of those surveys said that overuse of the phone was causing conflict with their loved ones. And even if a phone isn't in use, it can still cause problems. Studies showed that simply having a phone out at a restaurant on the table interferes with your sense of connection to your partner, because you always have a tendency to respond to it or to look down. I know none of you do that. Here's another acre. A Mississippi school district has removed Harper Lee's novel To Kill a Mockingbird from its 8th grade curriculum because, quote, it makes people uncomfortable. Now, if you've not read To Kill a Mockingbird, I strongly suggest that you do that. It's a story set in the 1950s about racial injustice in a Mississippi town. James LaRue of the American Library Association objected to the removal, saying that the classic novel makes us uncomfortable because it talks about things that matter. Okay? And then there was this acre. It was considered a bad week for trick-or-treaters after creationists in Kentucky began distributing fake $1 million bills to be given to kids on Halloween. The bill said, have you ever lied, stolen, or used God's name in vain? The penalty for your crimes against God is death and eternal hell. Trick or treat. The sky is falling. Now, I got that phrase, as you likely know, from the children's story, Chicken Little. And you know that story? Yes. You read that story? Well, for the two of you who don't, Chicken Little likes to walk in the woods and look at the trees, and she likes to smell the flowers and listen to the birds singing. And one day while she is walking, an acorn falls from a tree and hits the top of her head. Oh my, the sky is falling. I must run and tell the lion about it, says Chicken Little, and she begins to run. She runs and she runs. And by and by she meets the hen. Where are you going? Asked the hen. Oh, Henny Penny, the sky's falling, and I'm going to tell the lion about it. How do you know? Asked Henny Penny. It hit me on the head, so it must be so, says Chicken Little. Let me go with you, says Henny Penny. Run, run. So the two run and run until they meet Ducky Lucky. The sky is falling, says Henny Penny. We're going to tell the lion to tell him about it. How do you know that? Asked Ducky Lucky. It hit Chicken Little on the head, says Henny Penny. So it must be true. May I come with you? Says Ducky Lucky. Come, says Henny Penny. So all three of them run on and on and on until they meet Foxy Loxy. Where are you going? Asked Foxy Loxy. The sky is falling and going to the lion to tell him about it, said Ducky Lucky. Do you know where he lives? Asked the fox. I don't, says Chicken Little. I don't, says Henny Penny. I don't, says Ducky Lucky. I do, says Foxy Loxy. Come with me and I will show you the way. So he walks on and on until he comes to his own den. Come right in, says Foxy Loxy. They all go in, but they never come out again. So just this week, either coincidence or divine entanglement, however you look at things, brought me to a passage from one of my favorite Buddhist writers, Pema Chodron, that Buddhist nun who's been so influential in so many lives. She's written such good books. If you have not read The Places That Scare You, or When Things Fall Apart, and you are thinking this is a tough time to be alive, I recommend those books. Pema Chodron writes, it's hard to know whether to laugh or to cry at the human predicament. Here we are with so much wisdom and tenderness, And without even knowing it, we cover it over to protect ourselves from insecurity. Although we have the potential to experience the freedom of a butterfly, we mysteriously prefer the small and fearful cocoon of our ego. So I, as you know, have been using the Gospel of Thomas, which is soon going to come to an end, and I've been preparing for our future times together in reading from a vast collection of what is called by spiritual directors the perennial tradition. Richard Rohr sees the perennial tradition as an alternate or orthodoxy for the gone wrongness of many expressions of religion today. And you find the perennial tradition in all philosophies, all the world's living religions. And these religious traditions continue to say, each of them in their own way, these things. There is a sacred reality and mystery underneath and inherent in the world of things. There is in the human a self that has a natural capacity, similarity, and longing for the sacred. And the final goal of all existence is union with this sacred mystery. There is a sacred reality and mystery inherent and underneath all things. There is in the human a self that has a natural capacity, similarity, and longing for this sacred. And the final goal of all existence is union with the sacred mystery. This is the kind of thing that Teilhard de Chardin was talking about years ago, that Ilya Delio, Michael Dowd, and other people are talking about today. One of the passages that I read this week from the Upanishads is so apt for our time, so apt for our nation and for our world. Lead me from death to life, from falsehood to truth. Lead me from despair to hope, from fear to trust. Lead me from hate to love, from war to peace. Let peace fill our heart, our world, our universe. Peace, peace, peace. And yet, what seems to get attention in our time is death, falsehood, despair, fear, hate, war. Now, I started talking today about the end of the world and the sky falling because that's what the teaching from the Gospel of Thomas we are up to for today is all about. This is the teaching in Thomas. Heaven and earth will completely disappear in your presence, and the one who lives by means of the living one will not see death. Because, as Yeshua says, the cosmos is not worthy of the one who discovers the self. Now, if you've been on this ride for a while, you know that this is the way the Thomas begins. That the Gospel of Thomas is, quote, secret teachings. They're not secret because they're out there for everybody. But those who discover the secret of the teachings will not taste death. They're not talking about physical death. They're talking about something else. Now, for those of you who are relatively new to this trip, the Gospel of Thomas was among a collection of documents found in 1945, scrolls or manuscripts. And scholars, when they finally got their hands on it, began to discover the importance of this discovery. Because Thomas, and I'll say more specifically about this next week, contains sayings of Jesus and of his early followers that in many cases are considered to be the earliest version of these sayings that we have. So much so that the scholars of the Jesus Seminar included Thomas in a publication of theirs called The Five Gospels. Kind of wish they hadn't done that, but I'm glad they did because it makes Thomas accessible, and it also has a commentary on every one of the sayings, a little brief commentary. And it shows you where these sayings appear in Mark or Luke or Matthew and John, and the frequency of them, and also give some interpretation as to the date of the saying. The Gospel of Thomas is not a gospel as we think of a gospel, because it isn't a narrative. There's no virgin birth. There's no passion scene. There's no resurrection. Thomas is simply a collection of sayings. And I've been using Thomas as a roadmap to follow in my teachings for a variety of reasons. I wanted to contribute to religious literacy. I think it's important that you know about this material. And I think people, particularly who call themselves Christians, need to know about the existence of this material. I think we need to know the most recent and best scholarship in all areas of life, particularly religion. It was Albert Einstein who said, the further the spiritual evolution of mankind advances, the more certain it seems to me that the path to genuine religiosity does not lie through the fear of life and the fear of death and blind faith, but through striving after rational knowledge. As I said, it's been convenient for me to have a roadmap to follow, so I can know from week to week what the next step is going to be in my own spiritual study. When I was in seminary, Karl Barth was a theologian who at the time had some significant influence on me, because he reintroduced to me the world of the Bible, which I had been given in a soft fundamentalist upbringing, and therefore had kind of put on the side in favor of psychology. And Karl Barth introduced some of us to what he called the brave new world of the Bible. And Barth said that it was important for the preacher to preach with the newspaper in one hand and the Bible in the other. And what he meant by that was to seek to find the relevance between what is in the world of the Bible and what is in the world where we live. How do we bring our faith to the lives that we live in the world where we live in? I think that organized Christianity has made at least two deadly dualistic decisions since the time of Constantine. The first one was to separate politics and religion. Jesus was executed for taking on the political establishment of his day. It was not for saying, consider the lilies of the field, that they killed him. It was for his saying, God is God and Caesar is not. The early followers of Jesus were people who refused to give allegiance to Caesar. It was not for worshiping the God of Jesus that they persecuted those people. It was for their failure to give equal time to Caesar. Because the titles, Prince of Peace, Lord of Lords, were Caesar's titles. And when the early followers of Jesus began to apply them to Jesus, they didn't like that. So any honest reading of the Jesus narratives or of St. Paul's writings clearly reveals an unwillingness to separate politics and religion. That division came with Constantine. And the division of right and left, in case you're interested, this is not in my notes, but that came with the French Revolution. Because the people who were in the right and power, the ones who, and interestingly, the clergy aligned with those who sat on the right side of the king. And the people who were the rabble-rousers, those who were for the poor and the dispossessed and not part of the establishment, they sat on the left. So that's where we get the right and the left distinction that we have today. The other disastrous choice the church made, and I'm not going to elaborate on this, was when it decided to disregard the insights of science back during the days of Copernicus and Galileo. And we're still kind of recovering from that at all. So there are many people who I look at, many scholars that I read about the Gospel of Thomas, who say that this teaching should be the last one in the collection. and for all we know, it may have been. Those who want to claim some sort of divine authorship for the writings in what we call the Bible kind of reveal a lack of information about how the various writings we have came down to us from a multitude of handwritten fragments copied by scribes who not only made mistakes in their writing but also made their own editorial changes. I've shown this in here to you before, but I just want you to see again. When I was in seminary and could read Greek, this is the first page of the Gospel of Mark, according to Mark, that's in the Greek New Testament that we studied. The beginning of the Gospel of Jesus Christ, according to the writings of Isaiah the prophet, and I'm sure you can read the rest of it on your own. What's interesting about this is the first 4 verses of Mark. What's down below this line right here are all the variant readings from different manuscripts that have something different than what you have up here. And whoever put together this particular edition of the Gospel of Mark had to decide from all of this what to put up here. Now, it gets even more complicated than this, because this is in Greek. It's Koine Greek, common Greek. Jesus didn't speak Greek. Jesus spoke Aramaic. But we don't have any Aramaic sayings of Jesus. Even what we have in Thomas is in Coptic. So we're kind of working knowing that there's a layer under what we are able to see that we can't see about Thomas. At any rate, this teaching that we're looking at today speaks to the end of the world and a kind of knowing both of ourself and of what is that enables us to remain unafraid no matter what happens. There's a kind of knowing of the self and of what is that when we know it allows us to be unafraid of whatever is coming. Now, according to David Mead, who is a Christian numerologist and also considered to be a conspiracy theorist, he predicted that the end of the world would come on September the 21st of this year. Some of you may be aware of that. What was going to happen was that the Earth was going to collide with Planet X, which he named Nibiru. And when that didn't happen, David Mead said, well, I made a mistake. Actually, what's going to happen is that a lot of bad stuff is going to happen in October. Which it did. And a lot of good stuff happened in October, too. But I give you good news now. You've got 3 years to get your act together. Because according to Jean Dixon, who's an American psychic, she's proclaimed that Armageddon will take place in 2020. She also previously predicted the world would end on February the 4th, 1962. So that didn't happen. There have been people predicting the end of the world since we began to keep records about stuff. I want to encourage you to do this, because I may not do all this in the class. It will be in the text that goes out. Go to Google and enter this search term, predictions about the end of the world. And then go to the Wikipedia article that lists all of those predictions. And you will be amazed at some of the people who have predicted the end of the world, and people who have taken it seriously. Pope Sylvester, you remember him? They named a cat after him. Pope Sylvester said the year 1000 would be the end of the world. And then just a few years after that didn't happen, other Christian leaders said, no, he made a mistake. What he meant to say was the year 1000 plus the 33 years that Jesus lived, so the end of the world would be 1033. That didn't happen either. Pope Innocent the second predicted the world would end in 1282. That's 666 years. That's a magic number. 666, after the rise of Islam. Martin Luther, whose memory we invoke today in our worship, said the world would end in 1600. Dear John Wesley, founder of the Methodist Church, saw that the millennium would begin in 1836, and he said he got that information from the book of Revelation. I've read the book of Revelation. I didn't see that in there. A guy I used to listen to a long time ago on the radio when I was driving from one church appointment to another late at night, a guy named Herbert W. Armstrong. Any of you remember him? He predicted the world would end in 1936, but he revised that prediction 3 more times in his lifetime, and he died before he could get it right. Of course, Pat Robertson is on the list. Most of you remember poor Harold Camping. Remember Harold Camping in 1994? He predicted the end of the world. Finally, he did it so many times he gave up. There was a guy from Houston named Marshall Applewhite. Remember him? Marshall Applewhite was head of a cult called Heaven's Gate. And he said that there was a spaceship that was following the Hale-Bopp comet and is going to come near the Earth, and that if you wanted to get on that spaceship, all you had to do was kill yourself, and they'd come and get your soul and take you off. And so they all went to the House of Eyes and then went home and committed themselves. I know people who were so sure the world was going to end in January the 1st, 2000. Literally, true story. I know a man who is multi-degree. I mean, being smart does not protect you from that. He is multi-degree. He bought 2 18-wheel trailers and filled them up with survival food and water. I don't know what he did with those. I know you know this, but I just need to say it. The people who wrote the documents of the New Testament did not have us in mind. The book of Revelation was not written for people who live in the 19th, 20th, and 21st century. It was written for people back there. People believe all sorts of weird things. Some people believe that if they strap explosives on themselves and walk into a place where there's a lot of people and blow themselves up, that people would change their beliefs. What we believe, it creates our experience of the world. That's why it's very important to know what you believe. What we believe about ourselves and what we believe about others creates our experience. And even what we believe about somebody else does not contain or define that person. No idea about a person is that person. That's what prejudice is. That my idea about someone is what that person is. That's why I think many people are prejudiced about God. Because we think what we believe about God is God. And no belief about God can contain God. All of us use what in psychology we call motivated reasoning to fend off any evidence that our strongly held beliefs might be wrong. Many people are so defined by what they believe, they hate to lose arguments that show them to be wrong. So when confronted with new troubling information, we selectively interpret facts and use what's called contorted logic to make the conflicting evidence go away. In fact, what research by those who study such matters has shown is exposing people to information that is contrary to strongly held political or religious beliefs actually intensifies their beliefs, making them more rigid and entrenched. For example, I came to the conclusion years ago that homosexuality is not a choice, but it is a state, like being left-handed or having red hair. So far, no one who holds strongly held beliefs opposed to what I believe has ever said to me when I present them with the path I have used to get to my belief, they've never said, "Holy smoke, I never saw it that way. I'll change my mind." That's never happened. By the way, I do believe that the main purpose of Jesus' teaching was to change people's minds. To change people's minds about God, and to change people's minds about how the world ought to be run. A lot of people think that Jesus' job was to change God's mind about us, but it's just the other way around. A man goes to see a spiritual master. He's seeking direction and guidance. The spiritual master asks him to come in and have a seat. The man says, "What truths can you teach me?" And the master says, "Well, we'll see. Do you like tea?" "Yes." "Well, we shall have tea while we visit." And so the master gets the tea set out and begins to pour the man a cup of tea, and he pours the tea into the cup and continues to pour until the tea is spilling out of the cup and onto the tray and off the tray onto the table and off the table onto the floor. And the man says, Stop! You filled it up." And the master says, "Return to me when you are empty." So the lesson we need is that we need to empty ourselves of preconceived ideas in order to be open to a broader, more complex reality. Anne Lamott says, reality is unforgivingly complex. I don't have, nor do I know anyone who has, a complete grasp of the truth. I know that I have held some things in the past that I thought were absolutely, positively true. And then something would come up out of the realm of science or historical research or in archaeology or anthropology or psychology, and my truth got replaced by something that turned out to be even truer. Now, we live in a world where people believe some pretty weird things. And I think this is usually because one of two types of error in thinking may be occurring. First of all, the person may be believing a falsehood. Second, the person may be rejecting a truth. People who believe in alien abductions believe a falsehood. And people who deny the Holocaust have rejected a truth. Now, this is not in my notes, but my research department pointed out to me just yesterday an article in the Houston Chronicle where a man who was involved in the Las Vegas shooting has begun receiving hate mail. You see that? Because the Las Vegas shooting was staged. It was done by actors. It was not real. It was made up. I encourage you to become skeptics. The word skeptic comes from a word, the root word of skeptic means being thoughtful. Now, it would be nice if we humans were rational creatures, but we aren't. We can hold beliefs that can cause us to do incredible acts of kindness and shows us to be enlightened creatures. But we can also do things that reveal patterns of thought and action that lead to incredible destruction and brutality. We do what we do, both the most unspeakable horrors and the most heart-rending acts of courage, in the name of religion, truth, national pride, or defense, and other reasons. I remind you that faith is not about believing certain things to be true. Faith is about having a stance in life that leads to transformation, to our fulfilling our primary purpose in life, which is that of emotional, intellectual, and spiritual growth. More specifically, growth in peace, love, and joy. So those are questions I want to ask you on a regular basis. How are you doing with peace, love, and joy? In the concrete, specific relationship that you have with yourself, you know, the way you talk to yourself. We all talk to ourselves. And in the relationship that you have with the people in your life, how are you doing in experiencing and expressing peace, love, and joy? Faith is seeing reality as friendly, as gracious, because reality is God. Maya Angelou said, a bird doesn't sing because it has an answer. It sings because it has a song. Now, my belief is that if we do the spiritual religious work that leads us to be aware that we are living immersed in God, that we know God is all around us and within us, then we come to know what Jim Finley says when he says, though I am not God, I am not other than God either. And though I'm not you, I'm not other than you either. And though I am not the earth, I am not other than the earth either. Then our lives becomes a measure of our own godliness. Then life is not a threat. The song we have to sing comes from knowing that. So, the world is coming to an end. Have a nice day. See, from the beginning of time, people have been predicting the end of the world. And that's what this talk is about. I want to acquaint you, therefore, with three Greek words. I've never done this in my teaching here. But they're words that are used in Christian Scripture, and they're words that people use some derivative of when they're talking about things that are coming. Okay? And one of the words is apocalypsis. And this word is translated in English as revelation. If you look in that Greek New Testament I showed you, the last book in the Christian collection is called Apocalypsis. The revelation. And some interpret it in a way that indicates that the author of the book of Revelation was writing for people in America in the 19th, 20th, 21st century. The word revelation simply means an unveiling, a revealing, taking the cover off. And in this sense, we all have times of apocalypse. Maybe pleasurable, maybe painful. So the term is not reserved for the end of the world. The term is reserved for the end of a world in our mind. We come to see that things are no longer as we thought they were or imagined them to be. The little world that we have created to live in begins to crumble, and we're left with something else. There is a proverb that says, those who are asleep live separately in their own worlds. Those who are awake live together in the same world. Now, in theological language, and one that is specific to the Christian tradition, the day of the apocalypse is also the day when the reality of God is revealed to us. I think that one of the great apocalyptic days for me was on that day in New Mexico when I first heard Ilia Delio put into language what had been a deep intuition of my own growing understanding of the sacred, about who God is as this expanding, creative, entangled, evolving energy. Ilia Delio is representative of that group of forward thinkers who are leading us to see that the human species is creation itself becoming aware of itself. That's a different world. Now, apocalyptic days can for some be days of great joy and for others fear and trembling. Got to give up what I always thought was so. Either people experience the freshness and excitement of the new, or the fear and sadness of losing what they thought held their lives together. One of the greatest compliments people give me after a talk like this is you didn't give me anything to hang on to. Good. It's not your job to hold on. It's your job, our job, to develop the faith that realizes we are held. We're safe. We are safely held. As we see how the nature of God is indeed love, how we come from this love, how all others do as well, we will likely experience shame and remorse at how little at times we have extended love and kindness to those Jesus referred to as the least of these, or as our enemies. When we come to see that we come from light and love, it will likely pain us to realize how much time we have wasted playing in the shadows. Another Greek word that you may hear some religious folks use, especially those preaching about the end of time or what they call the second coming of Christ, is the word parousia. And the word parousia simply means presence. The Orthodox, Eastern Orthodox, Catholic traditions are much better about ritualizing this than most Protestant groups are. But it refers to those moments when we are really present to presence. It's what Paul means when he writes, "It's not I who lives, but Christ lives in me." Mystics are those who spend more time than most mortals being present to presence. When Jesus said, "I and the Father are one," he was announcing the end of the world. The end of a humanity that lived dualistically. "I'm putting the two together," said Jesus. Now, over my life, I have experienced many progressive unveilings and awarenesses of both unveiling and presence. For example, my understanding of what it means to be a Christian has evolved over a long period of time. It started out believing a certain set of things in order to make me an accepted member of a particular group where I would be safe with the ultimate goal of going to heaven when I died. And then over a long period of time, it began to be that I thought being Christian meant to follow the teachings of Jesus. Which, if that is the case, I might just be the worst Christian you've ever seen. Now, where I'm getting to in my own thinking is that being Christian is to allow Jesus to become alive in me. For me to be able to pray, "Grant me more of the resurrected Jesus in me, that resurrection may touch everything that I do and everywhere that I go." One other Greek word that you will hear, especially in reference to Thomas and collections like Thomas, is an English transliteration of the word gnosis. Some people dismiss Thomas and other writings that are in a collection by simply saying, they're just Gnostic writings, just write them all. What Gnosticism means is a recognition of the self. The word recognition means recognition, re-knowing, a knowing that we have lost, become separated from, and we get reconnected to that. It's knowing that particular self. St. Francis would pray over and over, God, who are you? God, who am I? Who are you? Who am I? That is not a bad spiritual practice. So, unveiling, being present, self-knowledge. This is not only the path of individual transformation, it is also the foundation for the transformation of the world. We cannot realistically hope for the transformation of the world without a willingness to be open to transformation of ourselves. So that's why I said the last time we talked, take up the habit of saying, not yes but yes and. Because our tendency is to push away instead of welcome. The relationship between apocalypsis, parousia, and gnosis, revealing, being present to presence, and self-knowledge. They are indispensable in keeping us on the right path as we seek to understand the teachings of Jesus or the tradition of any truth. So, go now into the world, feeling safe, and with the wise knowledge that the sky is falling. No matter where you go this week, no matter what happens, remember this, you carry precious cargo, so watch your step, and I'll see you here next week. Thank you.
What you do, because this is quite a commitment. It's nice.
It is actually